Welcome to the NOSA Unleashed podcast, where we want to expose and remove the stigma surrounding mental health by discussing real-life challenges and obstacles that keep us paralyzed and fearful to move forward. Let us inspire you to believe there is more to life than what you are currently experiencing. Now is the time to end the silence and pursue the path to purpose and fulfillment. We will do this together because no one stands alone. Welcome back to the NOSA Unleashed podcast. I'm Laura Burgoyne, joined here with my sister, Connie Blackwood, as we talk about important topics that impact our everyday life. And oftentimes we don't talk about them. We don't address them. We don't bring them to the light. And so that's really what we want to do today. And specifically, we want to talk about pride. And pride is one of those, ugly words that, we never want to actually admit that we struggle with pride, right? And I know that I had that issue for many years of my life. And now, having walked through some of the things that I've walked through, I look back and I'm like, oh my gosh, so many pitfalls, so many difficulties, so many broken relationships could have been avoided had I not been so prideful. And so, welcome, Connie, to the conversation.
Thanks for having me. And I'm really excited about this topic because I feel like sometimes we're actually walking in pride and we don't even realize what we are doing it. And that was the story of my life in my early years, for sure. I didn't even recognize how much I was walking in pride until after the fact. And I look back and I was like, whoa.
Right.
And it still rears its ugly head at times. And I'm like, oh, like you want to be free of it, but it's part of our human condition. And so by recognizing it, then we're better able to deal with it.
Mm-hmm. And it's funny because I even just had a conversation with my husband the other night, and he was expressing something that was really frustrating him, right? And was really, oh, you know, he didn't take it very well, right? And, my first instinct was to defend myself, to say, well, that didn't happen, or that's not the way that it happened, or you perceived that incorrectly, right? And you know what? The bottom line is that's pride, right?
Hmm.
Like if my actions, if my words, if the things that I do cause someone else pain, like the opposite of pride is humility, right? But oftentimes we want to preserve ourselves, like we want to defend ourselves, right? And how many times do conflicts and different things happen in our life, and really the root cause is pride? You often don't recognize it until after the fact. But the goal for today is for us to really examine, what does pride look like? How does it manifest in our everyday life? What are some of the thinking and the thoughts behind pride? What are some of the underlying heart condition things that we need to be aware of, that if that's happening in our life, we need to really kind of take a step back and be like, do I really want that person to feel that way in this conversation, right? And,
Hmm.
I've lived this life. I know I'm learning more and more and more what it looks like. And when it happens, I'm like, oh, Laura, not again. Right?
For sure. And, I think back to like all the people who loved me, wanted to pour into me, and it was my way or the highway. Like it was, and I was like so sure I was right. So
Hmm.
sure I was doing the right thing that I was ignoring everybody who cared about me. And that's the thing, like pride gets us to that place where we think we're right and we think we're justified in believing that everyone else is wrong. They just don't understand. They have no idea what I'm walking in. They have no idea where I've been or where I'm going.
Hmm.
And a lot of times we get in that place where the only one who really understands me is God, and we blocked out everyone else and pushed them away. And those are the people who love us, care about us. And even when we've done that, we'll still be there. But we could avoid so much pain and heartache and damage to those relationships if we would just hear them out and pray and consider what they've said instead of just going, no, you're wrong. That's not true. This is exactly the way it is. And you have no idea what I'm going through. You have no idea what I'm facing. You have no idea what I'm walking in. And in
Hmm.
reality, they might have a clearer picture because they're actually outside of what you're facing. And you get
Mhm.
blinded by your own situation and don't see it. And that's the danger of pride. We don't see it coming.
Right.
It's like sideswiping us. And we're like, where, what? How did I end up with these damaged relationships? And I'm alienating myself to the point where I have very few friends. Like, what happened here?
Mhm. Uh, a situation comes to mind actually, which was really a very illuminating moment for me. And I was in a relationship with this person, and something came up, like um we disagreed on something, right? And the way that that person responded to me was like it in so much pride, right? And what really woke me up to it was two things. Number one, in the way that person responded to me, I could see myself.
Hmm.
And then the second thing was how it made me feel. I was like, if when I have that point of view or that stance and I'm that like headstrong and I won't relent and I won't even like consider what somebody else is saying, I don't want anyone to feel the way that I'm feeling right now. That moment actually really humbled me because I was like, are you kidding me? This is how it feels when I get to in that mindset or in that place where, like you said, my way or the highway. Like I know what's best, so you got to do it my way, right? And you know, you don't always realize what it's doing to the other person on the other side of that conversation. But I was able to feel it firsthand. And it was a really humbling experience. But then at the same time, it opened my eyes to be like, I hate how that feels, and I don't want other people to feel that way. And so it makes me more mindful when I'm in conversations with people and trying to be open to someone else's perspective and putting myself in their shoes, right? And if I was in that situation, how would I perceive that situation, or how would it impact me? And not be so linear, right? Like have some
Hmm.
more flexibility. And it's okay to not agree. It's okay to not always be right. And it's okay to, take the lower ground, right?
Yeah, I I remember in my 20s, like I was so sure that I knew everything, right? And that's a dangerous place to be when you're like, I know everything, I don't need to learn anymore. I'm good. That's a dangerous place to be because God wants us growing, God wants us teachable. And as soon as we think we know it all, that we've shut that off. And so then we're
Hmm.
distancing ourselves from God, distancing ourselves from other people. And that's like for me was my biggest struggle, I think, was the fact that I thought I was right. And
Hmm.
I had convinced myself that no one else could understand me but me, right? And I think we don't even recognize what we've done to our relationships until they're gone
Hmm.
sometimes. And yeah, I think when we talk about what pride looks like, it's when we think we are like we know have all the answers. It's when we think that we're smarter than everybody else. It's when we go, I have more wisdom about what's going on than anyone else in the world. That's when pride comes in because we're just like so focused on us. We've lost focus of what God calls us to because God wants us to focus outward, not inward. And the more we
Hmm.
focus inward, the more we open that door to pride.
Hmm. Another thing that I think pride looks like is when we elevate ourselves above
Hmm.
others, right? And actually, two biblical stories come to mind. is this king is holding a banquet and this guy comes in and he expects that he's going to be at the head table, right? But there's no place for him, right? And his place is at like the table that he would consider for the lowly people, right? And the space that was reserved at the head table was for the person that that man would have considered the lowest of the low, right? And so sometimes pride looks like us elevating ourselves, us thinking that we are better than we are, that we deserve something. And when we don't receive that, like somehow we think that, well, we've been wronged, we've been slighted, like
Mm.
I deserve more. Like, you know, I have all the accolades, I have all the letters behind my name. So somehow that makes me more important than someone else, right? And I love the way that Jesus depicted humility was that Jesus washed the disciples' feet,
Yeah.
right? He brought himself lower to show other people honor, right? And even if in a situation you are right, let's say you are right. Humility means you will still honor that person. You will not demand your way. You will not insist that your way is the only way. Like you will be willing to give up your rights for the rights of someone else. That's true humility. And I see that played out in the life of Jesus, right? And it's like that's sometimes so hard for us to do, right?
Hmm.
It's like self-sacrificing sometimes to not take what you expect to be rightfully yours because you've worked hard for it, you've earned it, whatever. But that is pride. The moment you start elevating yourself above another person, that's pride, right? And what does the Bible say about pride? God will not allow you to elevate yourself about above anyone, especially himself, right? Sometimes when we think we know it all, we even think we know more than God.
Hmm.
That's a scary place to be.
Yeah, that's true. And I like what you were saying there also, like about entitlement, where we get into these places where we are like, well, because we've done all this, we're entitled to these things. And you see that a lot in our culture, right? This sense of entitlement. And
Mhm.
so, I think even as the generations go on, it's getting more and more into the entitlement and maybe less and less of, you know, being so stringent about my way, but it still is your way. It's just
Mhm.
not as obvious, as
Yeah.
it might have been in my day anyway. I'm older than you, so.
But also the thing with that is because it's now become more of a cultural norm,
Mm,
then, it's harder to detect that that's even something that's wrong.
that's true. Or unhealthy, right?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Because I remember when we were kids, like if we would have had that mindset or behaved in that way, like we would have been called out immediately, right?
Yeah, especially by your parents.
Yeah, but nowadays it's so common.
Yeah.
It's actually expected that, you know what, it just, people have this perception that, well, that's just the way that it is. And that's not. Like that's so detrimental to them that personally, but also to relationships, to society at a whole. And where did these things come from? Like it's really sad to see this happening.
I think about how polarizing pride can be too, right? Like
Hmm.
you don't draw people in when you're prideful, you push people away. And, the people that tend to stick with you are people who are doing exactly what you're doing and are on your
Hmm.
same bandwagon. But those who are like, you know, actually coming from a different place and actually trying to speak into your life, they're the ones who get alienated. And those are the ones who actually can make a difference in our lives and do pour into us. It's the other people that I feel like they take as much from us as we take from them, right? And so
Hmm.
then you kind of have this unhealthy bond between the two people, right? And
Hmm.
I recognize that when I was in my 20s, the people that I had close to me were unhealthy people, and they were in the same, you know, place that I was. And none of us recognized it, right? So we all thought we were on the same, like on the right path, right? And we all just fed into one another. And so you sometimes you don't see it coming that you're even damaging your other relationships because you've got all these other ones going on, but you don't even see how unhealthy they are, right?
Mhm.
And they're not actually helping you grow or be a better person or even like move forward in life. You keep staying in the same place. And I keep hearing this from people. I've been stuck for so long. How do I get out? Well, I think sometimes we just need to take a real honest look at, okay, how humble am I? Am I
Mhm.
actually walking in humility or am I actually polarizing the people that I need in my life? That will
Mhm.
motivate me to move forward, that will encourage me along my path, that won't hold me back.
Mhm.
Sometimes I think we choose our mess and then we don't realize how we got there.
Mhm. Well, I think another thing that might keep us in our messes is just this mindset that, we know it all,
Yeah.
right? We almost get to become unteachable, right? And I'll use an example, and I love my son, but I'm homeschooling him right now. And teenagers, especially I would say teenage boys, and I've gone through this with each one of them. There's a period of time where it's like they think that they know everything and the parents know nothing. And it's hard to teach my son when he's coming from that mindset because
Mm,
it's like I have something to teach you and I need you to have a teachable open spirit right now so that you can actually learn something. But if we don't have that mindset, then we close ourselves off from learning from people, from allowing people's lives to impact us in a positive way. And that's a really sad place to be. Like, we should be learning something every day and we should be willing to learn things from anyone, right? Even someone we would consider uneducated, maybe
hmm
someone, you know, how many things do I learn even from children? I watch children. I watch the simplicity of their life, the unconditional love they have, their playfulness, their desire for adventure. And I'm like, dude, I learned so much from watching kids, right? Like
hmm
the way we grew up, I didn't have much of a childhood. I didn't learn how to be playful. I didn't learn how to have fun. And, even here as an adult, right? With grown teenage, some adult children, it's just like I have to be taught by infants some things, right? And it's just
hmm
having an open, teachable spirit and being willing to humble myself and be like, yeah, you know what? I don't know everything. And it's okay for us to say that. You know what? I don't know. Maybe that's something I need to, learn more about or figure out, or maybe talk to someone else who's maybe further down the road than I am and not, put on this false facade that somehow I have it all put together and I have all the answers. Like, that's not how you develop close-knit relationships.
Well, I'm even thinking about like a few weeks ago, like it crept up on me. I was at church, and I took the time to research something and figure out exactly how to do it. And there's three of four of us working on this problem because it was a technical problem and nobody knew how to fix it. And I was getting frustrated because no one would listen. And I had all the answers that I researched in front of me. And I even came to you and I was frustrated because I'm like, nobody's listening to me. And I was like, as I walked away from my conversation with you, I'm like, wow, that was pride right there. So then I have repented for it with God,
Hmm.
went back and I was like, okay. And I just said, so where are we at? And they're like, okay, well, we're here. We have this to do and this to do. And I was like, okay. But I came back way different than I left that conversation. Like I left abruptly. I came back friendly. Like it just shows the difference
Hmm.
even in that moment, right? Like the pride allowed me to like just stop, like storm away. But when I came
Hmm.
back, it was peaceful. And even though they still didn't listen to me, it didn't matter. They figured it out, which was awesome. So what? I found the answer. They figured it out on their own. They didn't need to look it up on the internet, right? And so even in that moment, yeah, I was teachable in the fact that I researched it, but I wasn't teachable by them. And so don't trick yourself by even that, right? Like make sure that you are still being open to what people are saying to you.
Mhm.
They needed to figure it out. And I was just another cook in the kitchen, confusing the matter, right? So
Mhm.
sometimes less voices is helpful, even if my answer was right. I didn't need to be right.
Right. And on that same note, it brings to mind like my kids, obviously, sometimes when I want to give them the answer, I want to tell them how to solve the problem, they don't want to know what I have to say. And I have
Hmm.
to step back in humility and be willing to watch them struggle. And they do figure it out, sometimes the hard way, but it's an opportunity for them to
Hmm.
learn things about themselves, learn things about, their limits. Like, so even in that, like me being willing to step back is allowing them to grow,
Hmm.
right? Even think about this situation you said at church, like, you know, if you had been adamant and you had pushed the issue, right? Not only would relationships have been hurt, but they maybe wouldn't have grown in an area that they struggled in and they had no knowledge, right? So
That's
it
true.
was an opportunity for them to learn. So sometimes in humility, even though we know the right answer, we need to step back and be like, they're going to figure this out. They got to figure it out on their own. When they want my help, they'll come talk to me.
Hmm.
And if they come talk to me, then I will gladly share what I know, but not like try to bulldoze our way into these situations and be like, I know the answer, just listen to me. Like, right?
Hmm. Yeah, for sure. And and I've grown because old Connie from when I was in my 20s and early 30s would have bulldozed and been like, I don't care if you're hurt feelings. I'm telling you this is how it is. And
Right.
it just shows like, I have grown. I recognized it pretty quick and I dealt with it and, relationships are great. I still have saved face with people, right? Like I still have positive relationships with all the people involved. And I couldn't say that if I had been my bulldozer self from before,
Hmm.
right?
Yeah.
I hurt a lot of people's feelings.
Hmm. And also, talking about humility, part of that is when you have hurt people's feelings, that you're not too prideful to go make it right,
Yeah.
right? That you are willing to say, you know what, I was in the wrong. I should have never behaved that way. I should have never spoke that way. I apologize, right? Like that is in itself is removing yourself from that spirit of pride and walking in humility.
Yeah. So we've looked at a lot of different aspects of how it can look like in our lives. And
Hmm.
I think the biggest thing is to realize is that it can creep up on you, right? Like it starts small. It's not like huge, right? Like that was a small interaction at church, right? It wasn't
Hmm.
some big thing. But if I hadn't dealt with it then I'm like already like in my mode of, oh, well, I was right there. So, if I do research, I must always be right. And
Hmm.
people need to listen to me. And it would have started that roller coaster. And it's important to recognize when you're starting down the road rather than when you're
Hmm.
way down the road, because that's more healing that has to happen to repair those relationships, especially if
Hmm.
you've actually hurt people. So in that case, I didn't hurt anyone because I walked away before I said anything I'd regret. I said my regretful things to Laura instead. But she's my accountability partner and she prays for me, so it's all good.
But you know what? It's all growth, right? It's all, learning and
Yeah.
recognizing things about ourselves and not being content just where we're at. Like always wanting to move forward and always wanting to deal with the issues that come up and become better, healthier versions of ourselves, right? So,
For sure.
I think that's a really great place to end for today, Connie.
Hmm.
Um, and you know what? We just welcome you back to listen to us next time. We're going to talk a little bit more about the damage that pride causes and maybe some more personal stories of times that we've actually had pride bring damage to us personally, but also to our relationships. So join us next time on the Nosa Unleashed podcast. Bye.
Bye.